Good afternoon. It's a beautiful July hot afternoon here in Tallahassee, Florida.
But it's not raining.
No, it's not raining yet, but it's only 3:30, so we still got plenty of time. I'm Matt Farrar. He's Joe Clements. We're live here from Strategic Digital Services in Tallahassee. And as usual, we've got a nice roundup of the week's marketing news, digital media news for you. And also, as always, we'll be taking your questions. So if you've got a question about marketing, about how to promote your business, how to promote your political campaign, or a question about anything, just drop it in the comments below, and we will tackle it if we can on the air. Joe, do you want to get us started with our first piece of news?
We got bad news, Matt.
Okay, what's the bad news?
Facebook is poor.
Facebook is not poor.
Facebook is poor. All the news says Facebook is poor.
My retirement account is riding on Facebook.
All
It can't be losing
says
value.
Facebook officially loses 123, which is a funny number, 123 billion in value.
That's unfortunate.
What does this actually mean?
It means my retirement
anybody?
account's having a really bad day, is what it means.
Down by at least 20%.
Yeah.
So you're poor.
Still. Still.
All right.
I don't want to ever do anything except have so much that I can have 20% of my value go away in a day and lose $123 billion. That's my goal.
Mark Zuckerberg is
Zuckerberg's
poor.
making a sad face in this article.
I know,
too.
because he's poor now. He can't own an entire Hawaiian island, 123 billion less wealthy. All right, let's talk about
Why did this happen?
Yeah. It happened because on an earnings call on Tuesday, Facebook announced that user growth in Europe was down by about 1 million users and flat in North America, which sounds like, oh, that's bad, except when you think that Facebook already has 1 billion users. Mm-hmm. So it's not in a position to be a high growth company anymore. Like when everybody you know they've already made a decision about Facebook, right? Like at this point, they're either on Facebook or they're not getting on Facebook.
Yeah. At this point, you're either being born and aging into the platform, or you have internet access for the first time and are coming into the platform.
Yeah, here's what I thought was interesting about that is they still increased their revenue per user. Even that, which is, in my opinion, what really matters for that business model. But let's dig in on the Facebook issue a little more and, give us a quick overview on Facebook as a company and why the Facebook app itself isn't all that Facebook is.
Yeah, and I think that's, look, Wall Street analysts obviously get what they're doing for the most part, but I think the average person sometimes mischaracterizes Facebook as just being the little blue app icon and nothing else on their phone. Don't forget that Facebook owns Instagram. Don't forget that Facebook owns WhatsApp. Don't forget that Facebook has an ad network that has all of these fingers into all of these different places on the internet, and that's how Facebook makes money, is by charging you for that ad network across their platforms and other platforms. So it's a little misleading sometimes to hear, Facebook app numbers change and think that means Facebook as a company has significantly changed. Facebook is still treated, in my opinion, a lot like a startup at this point. And Facebook, even though it's not that old compared to a lot of Fortune 500 companies, is a fairly mature company at this point.
Yeah.
They have a lot of practices, a lot of layers and levels in place at this point. They are not the equivalent of, another early unicorn Silicon Valley startup. They've got ad reps all over the world. They've got a huge number of users. They're a very stable company, even when their stock price drops $20 in a 24-hour period. And I think
20%. They'd be happy to only drop $20. Oh, it did drop.
I mean,
20%.
It was floating around 200, and I think it's down to like the 170s now. So maybe a little more than $20. But look, I mean, a couple months ago, after the Cambridge Analytica stuff came out, they were floating, I believe, in the 150s. So I mean, that's something to take into perspective too. Is sure they had a dip in the last 48 hours. But overall, like, that's going to stabilize. Facebook is not a company that's on the ropes. They are a fairly mature company that is doing a lot of things in the right direction. You and I were just talking a little while ago about what their next acquisition could or should be, and I agree that it's probably something in the audio space. I don't know that it's a mature company like Pandora or Spotify, but it could look a lot like Musical.ly or
Yeah.
something that they could go pick up for $1 billion.
So let's dig into something deep. One thing about this is I think it's just the media kind of gloating because it's become fashionable to
Yeah.
hate on Facebook. But let's dig into Facebook. And so if you're out there and you're a marketer and you're watching, you're probably familiar with the Facebook Ads Manager on the back end and how you place an ad buy, and how it's probably the most powerful advertising marketing engine in the history of the planet, as far as we know, in terms of what you can do with it and the cost it takes. The cost of entry is low. But here's the interesting thing about Facebook. Whenever Facebook buys another company, so let's say Facebook goes out and buys Pandora tomorrow. As soon as Facebook buys Pandora automatically becomes 2x more valuable, 3x more valuable, because when you hook the Pandora user profiles into Facebook's data, you now have something that you can advertise on more efficiently and effectively than anything else in the history of media.
Yeah.
So just by Facebook going out and grabbing something like that, and they probably won't buy Pandora, it'll probably be something, you said this earlier, that they can get out of value, it automatically becomes more valuable. And that's Facebook's power position, is any app it buys, it can plug into its ads manager, get profiles synced up, and then start running ads to those people. Like Facebook, you think of the app, what you need to think of Facebook as increasingly is a network of social network apps in some way,
Yep.
or a network of entertainment apps. Because that's what it is, and that's the power of Facebook. And so yeah, the blue icon on your phone, that's going to dwindle at some point. It won't be what it is forever, but Facebook's going to own the next 2 or 3 Facebooks. And what I actually think you'll see is, I think the future of this looks less like a couple of hegemons in the space, like Facebook or Twitter, and the ecosystem kind of devolves in a few ways. There's some more specialty, demographic or interest-based media platforms. It doesn't devolve where there's cat lovers. Facebook,
hundreds of different networks.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was a method that was tried
Yep.
early on in the space too.
Sure.
After Facebook came out, there was cat lovers social network.
Yeah.
There were all of these different
I
little
invested
micro
in it.
networks. I'm sure.
No. So you get cat lovers. So what I think you'll see is it'll be social networks, based on what is the medium that those or the media format.
You'll see 5 to 10 instead of 3 to 4.
So you'll have Instagram, which is Facebook with pictures. You have Twitter, which is Facebook with short amounts of words. You have, potentially IGTV, which is Facebook with tall short form videos. You'll have some sort of audio social network will come around eventually. Someone's going to crack that on how Alexa on your smartphone to make an audio social network work. And so you'll have a lot of those, and Facebook will probably own 2/3 of that market or half of that market.
Yeah, and let's pause for a second on the ad network for Facebook itself. If you've ever used Facebook ads in any way, you've used them in one of 2 ways. You've probably just hit the little boost button for a Facebook page you control, and you've given them $20, $50, $100 to make a single post go farther, or to just make your page be seen by people in, let's say, a 5-mile radius of where you are. If you've gone a little deeper with Facebook advertising, you've actually seen the Facebook Advertising Manager, where you can control all your different campaigns. You can create ones. That's where you get the powerful features. And then you have what we use here at SDS, which is what's called Business Manager. For an agency like us, it's where we have an easy way to control dozens or hundreds of different client pages and client ad accounts to make sure that we're tracking everything appropriately. Something that I think sticks out to me is, having used a pretty good number of online ad networks at this point, is Facebook is still my favorite one to use, because I think it perfectly straddles the line between being fairly easy for an entry-level user to come in, figure out how the platform works by a basic set of ads, and if you are a power user, have a really full-featured set of targeting parameters, custom audience list uploads, all these different things that really abundant, powerful ad platforms have, but it straddles the line right in the middle really nicely. Google is incredibly powerful. It's also really intimidating and has a lot of features that it takes some time to actually learn how to use. Twitter is kind of a dumpster fire. From an advertising perspective, it's great for influencing very specific audiences of people. But Facebook, I mean, hands down, is my favorite ad platform as an advertiser to use because it has the perfect mix of those two things.
Yeah, and let me, we can close this out with, 2.5 billion people in June used at least one of Facebook's apps. So there's, by the way, if you want to get an idea of scale, Facebook has 2.23 billion monthly users, Instagram has 1 billion, WhatsApp has 1.5 billion, and 1.3 billion people use Facebook Messenger. Mm-hmm. Here's the takeaway. I think there's a lot of people doing some wishful thinking on this Facebook earnings call, like, oh, Facebook's going to collapse. Here's what I will guarantee you. People didn't use less Facebook and pick up more newspapers.
Yeah.
They didn't use less Facebook and watch more network TV.
Yep.
They used less Facebook and spent more time on Instagram. They used less Facebook and spent more time. They didn't use less Facebook and spend more time with their family. Like, yeah, it's a...
Or paying attention to the road
yeah,
while
or
they're
paying
driving.
attention to the road they're driving. So, yeah, user attention is going to move, in and out of apps, but, 2.23 billion people is a lot of people. All right, so let's move off of, just Facebook, business-wise and macro scale, and let's dig into some of the features. There's a couple features that kind of got soft rolled out this week. You want to talk about one?
Sure. One of the things that stuck out to me that Facebook released is the ability to easily make ads on the Facebook Ads Manager app. So again, we talked about what level of ads user one of our viewers might be, but one thing that's always been really difficult is to create ads from the Facebook Ads Manager app itself. You have the challenge of trying to use a kind of clunky mobile app to do something that's fairly sophisticated. Basically, all you've been able to do up until this point is, create a boosted post easily, mm-hmm. or edit an existing campaign. The thing that Facebook has rolled out this week is some fairly detailed options for making your ads in the app, which makes sense as we use our phones more or our iPads, mm-hmm. and move away from desktop computer usage, especially for somebody that might be a small business owner that Facebook's trying to get onto the ads platform. So there's tools built into this like cropping images, adding text overlays, being able to check against the dreaded Facebook 20% text rule, to see if you're violating the process there. Filters, colors, stickers, logos, that kind of thing, to simplify the process of not needing to get on this computer to go make a pretty decent Facebook ad, mm-hmm. to roll out to a targeted audience. I actually think that's a really big feature. I think users have been asking for that feature for a long time, and I actually think it's going to make a difference for them.
Yeah, I think it'll be powerful for this reason. A lot of Facebook content, in the moment content, is generated on the fly. Like, you took a picture, you're a baker, you take a picture of a new cake you just put out. Yep. And what you don't want to do in that workflow, you want to post it, promote it, hit the target audience you want to hit, and then get back to work.
Get back to doing something else.
If you are, say, you're a campaign, right, or a political campaign, you want to follow the candidate around, get a good picture, get it up, promote it about the event. This makes that whole thing more seamless, I think. Now, look, it'll be limited. You're not going to be able to do the same stuff you can on your desktop, but like just being able to get stuff up quickly is going to be a useful tool for, I don't know what to call the type of content that you just kind of generate on the fly.
Yeah.
But it's going to be useful for that, which right now on Facebook, companies that you take a picture, you send it to someone back in the office, they're going to put it in Facebook, budget, get it approved, and post it. And so you have a whole cycle. This closes the loop on that cycle.
Well, think about even where we are compared to 2 years ago in terms of being able to generate any decent-looking content from a mobile device, versus having to do it, in Photoshop on your MacBook. That just wasn't an option 2 years ago. It was going to look clunky if you had designed something on your mobile app. Now you have people designing really interesting, beautiful things on their Instagram stories and putting them out there. So I think this is a reflection of that market changing, and because the camera is amazing on that little device you're carrying around in your pocket, and the processing power to add things on top of that photo are amazing. this reflects what is going on
Did
overall.
you know Apple on iOS has a native photo editing app that lets you do that?
I use it a lot.
I just discovered that on a flight a couple weeks ago. I
Yeah.
didn't have any Wi-Fi. I was just playing around on the phone.
No, I use it pretty frequently. If I'm taking a photo, it's for something that I know is going to go, I'm going to put my best face forward on social networks, obviously. But just to either play with the saturation or, crop or change some of the features on there, it's actually a pretty powerful little editor.
Okay. So moving, do you have anything else to say on the ads subject? So Facebook debuts funded news shows on Watch tab.
Yep.
I think if you are ABC, CNN, Fox, one of the interesting things there is you're kind of putting yourself in the position that the newspapers did 6 or 7 years ago, where Facebook's going to get you a lot of distribution and views. I don't think people are going to go from watching your stuff on Facebook to watching your stuff on TV. They might go vice versa. I think you're talking about different audiences to some degree, but it's not clear to me it's a smart move for those media companies. Maybe there's some sort of revenue deal. I mean, what do you think about that?
So, for these companies, and we're talking ABC, CNN, Fox News, Univision. So they're big companies that are doing these shows. Facebook is fully funding these shows. So it's a very low risk scenario for these networks because Facebook is paying for the production of them to do a news show. Facebook is spending $1 billion this year on original shows for Facebook Watch. These will be part of that. The other thing these shows will get is free advertising content out of Facebook to promote those shows. So, the game's a little different when you get to juice the numbers without having...
Yeah, what was Facebook's pitch to the networks and their talent? Like, that even would make me more skeptical. It's like, hey, we want to do this, so we'll pay for the whole thing.
I think Facebook is responding to knowing that they need to be stronger in the paid content game, like a Netflix, like a Hulu, like an HBO.
I think news fits them really well.
Yeah,
it's good for them.
And not having a good natural fit of where to go in that. Like, people are probably not going to watch a 30-minute sitcom and binge it on Facebook. So, my guess is news is probably the only way they could find to make this fit.
Here's what I think is the insight Facebook has there. A lot of local news stations do a really good live streaming business, I've noticed. So when the hurricane comes or a snowstorm up north, if you go to their pages, they are live streaming constant updates, constant weather radar, and those things always have a ton of people watching them. I think
that makes sense, right? Because that organization is set up to do that. All they literally had to figure out to do was get their broadcast signal into their computer.
But people watch it.
Yes.
Right?
No,
And that's
I agree.
the most important thing. So I actually think going to Facebook and tapping into a live or recent piece of news content, more so than a sitcom or a documentary, could actually work really well for what Facebook does.
Well, I think the problem for traditional, and I include TV and traditional news outlets, I think the problem for them hasn't been that they got less interesting, right? Or they were telling less compelling stories all of a sudden. It's that they were telling these stories in a medium that nobody was consuming anymore. So, if they're still able to tell compelling stories and they find the right medium for people to consume them, that's about the only way they can make their comeback. So I don't think local news ever went through a period where they were doing a bad job of telling stories or recording content, right? I think they went through a period where they couldn't find the medium of distribution where people's eyeballs still were.
Local
news was still always better than network news.
It's still, it's booming right now. Local news is in almost a golden age again.
Yeah, their value against, especially dollar for dollar against other forms of, distributing video content has become a really, really good value. And because of the increases in technological advancement, it makes it a lot easier to get your content.
That's why the Roy
right
family
audience.
are trying to buy them all.
Yes. That was a hat tip to a lovely little HBO show that's called what, Joe?
Succession?
Succession.
Yeah, that word.
Yeah.
That word is how you say it.
It's
I'm
not
sure.
it's not a
I
It's
mean,
not a show about Texas
we watched
or the
recently,
Confederacy.
it is about division, though. Like, there's a clear division in the family. It's actually an interesting show because I think it does a pretty good job, like, covering some of the issues and, like, the
Agreed.
media space and the political space surrounding it. I mean, like most HBO shows, it's a smart show, which actually gets us into another interesting trend we saw this week in a great email newsletter that you could subscribe to. It's called State of the Screens. Everybody gets in our office every week, and they had a breakdown of, was it Emmy Awards?
Emmy Awards.
Emmy Awards by network.
For the first time in 17 years, HBO was, and yes, pun intended, dethroned as the king of Emmy-nominated shows. So for the first time in the last 17 years, they got beat. And they got beat by...
Sorry, scrolling down. Netflix. All right, so
Netflix had 112 Emmy nominations this year.
HBO had 108.
108. HBO has been the reigning king for the past 17 years, no longer.
Yeah, NBC 78, FX 50. I mean, look, what's interesting here is almost all of the big shows were streaming-only shows where you can't buy ads on them.
Non-ad-supported shows,
like
crushed ad-supported shows.
Yeah, look, I don't know how the networks, I don't know how they sell this at upfronts. Which, if you're not familiar with how, like, TV, they have these things called upfronts before the fall season. I just think we're getting close to the time of year when they start doing it. Mm-hmm. But they show off all the new shows they're going to have and try and pre-sell the ad spots for their big, series and series premieres and things like that. But when you look at these numbers of where the quality programming is coming from, and they're
getting destroyed.
Yeah.
Destroyed.
Yeah, and so here's a list of the top ones, right? For drama and comedy series, which are the two biggest that you see. So Game of Thrones, Stranger Things, Westworld, The Crown, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Marvelous Miss Maisel, Kimmy Schmidt, Silicon Valley, Glow, and Barry were all nominated. They're all not ad-supported. So literally the top 3,
and they're
6,
all
9,
Netflix
10,
or HBO.
Yeah. The top 12 you can't buy on if you're an advertiser. Ad-supported, Americans, This Is Us, Blackish Atlanta. There's 4 you can go get. And then Hybrid, Handmaid's Tale on Hulu.
And The Americans just had its finale, so that one's not going to
So
be
that's
back in the
Sorry, FX.
Yeah.
All right, look, I'll tell you why I think that's worth bringing up. Like, it is really important if you are in the marketing and advertising industry, if you're in the digital industry, which is who this format is really for, is keeping in mind, like, what you're buying in a lot of cases on digital is you're not going to be able to buy Game of Thrones. You're not going to be able to buy The Crown. So how do you get value out of knowing those shows are popular if your client isn't, say, Netflix or HBO? I mean, the answer is you have to target relevant content to the fans of those shows. Gary Vaynerchuk calls it culture hacking. We call it, riding the wave. Like, you got to figure out what the wave is for those fans and be relevant around the times that these shows are coming on, that they're premiering, that they're having their series or season finales. Like, that's how you capitalize on this trend without being able to directly buy the ads. And if you're real smart, right, and you have the budget to do it, you might find, like a Game of Thrones fan podcast, and you can buy some ad time on there. Or, you might have a blog partnership with whoever runs the biggest blog that follows The Crown. I don't know such
Any
thing
successful
exists.
option you find there, though, is still going to be a tiny fraction of that audience, right? You're not going to find anything that penetrates even half of that audience.
Yeah. But making a Facebook audience, either if you can't buy, I don't really know. This would actually be an interesting project to look up. I would like to look up Producer Kyle. Let's make a note. I don't know we'll actually have time to get this done ever, but I'd like to take these top shows and then see how many Facebook fans and Twitter followers they have on their platforms to see if they're actually addressable. I don't know the answer to that. It could be you target HBO fans on and you parse it like that. But that's how you market against the popularity of these shows. And you can do a lot of this in Twitter because a lot of people watch these shows that still premiere the same time from everybody. You can't binge them. Being relevant to them on Twitter can be a super powerful marketing strategy.
This is not going to change anytime soon. Now, you may see the leader change between HBO and and Netflix over the next couple years. But Netflix is putting $8 billion into their content lineup for this year alone, for just this year. There are hundreds of new shows and movies in development. They're spending $2 billion this year, just 2018. They've already spent half of it on marketing. Not any sort of content creation, not the shows themselves. They're spending $2 billion just on promoting Netflix itself and the content that it produces, which is more, considerably more, than some of their competitors are spending on producing the shows and the movies that they put out.
Yeah. Well, you see that reflected in the Emmy.
In the numbers, yeah.
Yeah, so, another part about that, though, is you have Netflix doing that. But here's an interesting read we got earlier in the week about Netflix, is for Netflix to be a sustainable model, it's still not where it needs to be yet. It's got to have 250 million global users. So there's still a race that's on here. And
that's at what, 125?
Yeah, and it's getting tougher because Disney is going to start their own streaming service, and they're going to break out all that Marvel and Star Wars content into a separate streaming service. HBO is going to be scaling up their production of new series, so they'll have competition there. So, Netflix is, the highest valued stock of all the FANGs right now, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google. But, they actually have the biggest hill to climb in order to reach long-term sustainability.
Their model's also interesting, though, because unlike Disney or unlike HBO, Netflix looks a little bit more like their startup heritage, right? They look kind of like a venture capital firm where not everything has to work well. Yeah. One thing has to work well a year, right? You've got to have your House of Cards. You've got to have... what was the show in the Keys? Bloodline. You've got to have one of those breakout hits, a quarter or every 6 months. Not everything has to be your all-star. HBO cannot afford to have a dud, right? Disney can afford to have some duds. HBO cannot have a dud series that costs $100 million to make come out. They simply can't sustain that. Netflix is going to have tons of duds this year.
Here's what I think is interesting about Netflix, is... a lot of their series are good. I've yet to see a Netflix original film that I thought was particularly outstanding. Yeah. A lot of their original films tend to be long tail, which is the nice way of saying B-rated movies. They hype them. They're spending money promoting them inside of Netflix.
Their talent definitely lies in shows with their original content.
Which makes sense given the form factor of Netflix, where you can binge string things out.
Even before the streaming platform was really a huge part of Netflix, they saw that happen even when DVDs were coming to your door, right? They made more money on people because they started wanting 2 and 3 DVDs at a time because they were binge watching a show than just being able to get one at a time. So if they were binge watching Friends, or if they were binge watching The West Wing, or whatever it was, people wanted to have the next DVD ready to go as soon as they were finished with the last one to see those episodes. And so even before they were even a big streaming platform, they were having that happen already, and people defaulting to shows because of binge watching.
Yeah. We'll see if they are able to break that. Staying on video, IGTV launched a month ago, and I like it. I think I can see how it can be successful. The consensus is from people who follow, the digital and social video space, is that it's had a stumble out of the gate. Now, I'd point out that it really doesn't matter because Facebook can just decide arbitrarily how much to focus on it, and they can change it on a dime. And they're very good at adjusting product to fit the user. One of the things they did is they launched it 2 ways. One, there was a separate app for it. But then 2, there was a button. And did you even know there's a separate app? There's a separate IGTV app?
Yes.
Okay. So they have the separate app, and then they have the little IGTV icon in normal Instagram. So the launch was confusing. It looked like at the outset that what they might be doing is longer form vertical video. It appears to be settling into a shorter form, 1 to 4 minutes, 1 to 5 minutes. It's not, you mentioned this earlier, it's not clear why they should have done that outside of the feed.
It's not clear why it needed to be a new feature as opposed to just enabling Instagram to sustain longer form video. And that's what I still don't understand. I get that they're making a bet on vertical video. I'm not sure that pays off for them, but it could. It depends on who their real end target actually is. You know, their early target was to try and start bringing disgruntled creators over from YouTube. I think that's going to be challenging for them because those creators are used to shooting in a 16 by 9 like horizontal aspect ratio, and to try to convince those people to now shoot two things simultaneously or have to shoot in a completely different configuration is going to be a tough sell, I think.
Yeah. Now, Instagram is testing putting a carousel of, so taking the IGTV format of vertical videos and having a carousel of them right underneath the Stories tab. So you would have Stories and then a carousel of IGTV videos and then your normal Instagram feed. They're testing that to see if they can push people through there. Now, look, I think one of the reasons Instagram probably didn't launch this straight out in the newsfeed is they wanted to test it and see how it worked without blasting it to every, just your regular user, like the user who realized, oh, there's a new button at the top. Like, that's the person, Instagram power user is probably who they were looking for to test with it.
It just felt early to me. It just felt like they hadn't baked everything fully, and they just jumped the gun and pushed it out a little too soon. But that's just my gut reaction.
But look, they have the weight to.
They can force things to work. Yeah, I mean they're big enough to force things to work.
All right, so moving a lot of Facebook news this week. There's always a lot of Facebook news every week.
Good and bad.
And this one I think is interesting. Facebook acquires a company called RedKicks, and the headline is to enhance by TechCrunch to enhance communications on workplace by Facebook. So RedKicks is a company that kind of let you integrate the Slack messaging style with email, so someone outside your messenger could like email into it, and you could email out of your messenger. So it was kind of a hybrid of email and Slack.
Yeah.
Workplace by Facebook is kind of Facebook's challenger to Slack,
but not an awesome one.
They'll probably try and improve it using this. Here's what I think the play that they see doing is, right now Facebook is viewed as a personal consumer-based platform, right? Like one of Facebook's biggest ad is like app installs to consumers and, new American flag swimming trunks and bathing suits and stuff like that. Here's what I think Facebook is trying to get. They're trying to get traction in the business-to-business space. Because if you have 10,000 Microsoft employees using Workplace by Facebook, or you have 500 employees that name your company, now all of a sudden you can use your Facebook ad
Microsoft
targeting.
Employees will be using Skype for business.
Yeah, that's probably true, right? It's a crowded space, but they're making a play in it. But the idea is you hook, again, going back to the idea that anything Facebook hooks in becomes more powerful. And now, as an advertiser, if I want to buy ads to human resource professionals that work at Fortune 500 companies in New York, well, now I can target ads to those people.
Yeah.
Or I can target ads to, if I'm an app installer and I have the next Slack, right? Like, I can target ads to everybody who works at Strategic Digital Services if they're on Facebook or Workplace by Facebook. I think that's the game they're playing there. They're trying to get into. How can they do more business-to-business stuff on Facebook? That's a big ad pie that largely Facebook doesn't get a lot of because it's difficult to target real tightly business leaders. And we actually have that issue marketing our own company and for some clients who want to market to higher level influencers on the platform. We've talked about this before. Who I actually think wins that battle is I think at some point Amazon buys Slack, and then Amazon lets you buy ads in people's Slack to order your new Office products, which Amazon then delivers.
Cha-ching.
Yeah. I think that's the deal that ultimately happens that clears this space, but I could be wrong. So, any other thoughts on Facebook Workplace?
No, I mean, they got a long ways to go before Facebook Workplace is a big thing, right? I mean, Slack is just crushing it against Facebook Workplace right now, and there's other options too. If you've got, if you've got a lot of Office products integrated already, you're probably going to use the Skype option for business. Let's not forget Google in this equation either, right? Google Hangouts for Business are actually a pretty powerful tool. Our entire email system and our file storage, everything we use here at SDS, is run through Google G Suite, which is the corporate version of Gmail and the associated products. So, Hangouts are not something that you want to forget about there. It's obviously a little bit different than having a broadcast chat with everyone, but Google's not down and out in that space either.
Yeah, but Google hasn't really monetized that product from an ad perspective so much as I can see, really. Like,
Google's game is to monetize from an ad perspective for the people who don't pay for it, right? They monetize all that through free Gmail, because you see in free Gmail those ads at the top of your email inbox for stuff that they've determined you like based on your email inbox content. Paying that $10 per month per user is kind of what gets you out of that ad game with Google, to not have to see that stuff. Now, they could always turn that off at some point and decide to start advertising to their corporate users. But that's been kind of the pay to play game so far, is give us $10 per person per month and we'll kind of leave you alone.
Yeah. All right. So kind of in the Amazon vein, an Alexa announcement. It's a little one, but an indicator of where we're moving. Alexa Cast is what Amazon is calling it. We'll let users cast Amazon Music. So if you're an Amazon Prime user, you have this for free. You just need to download the app, Amazon Music. It's roughly like Spotify for Amazon users, to Alexa devices. So I'm in that app. I just push cast, almost like an Apple AirPlay, and then I can pick the Alexa device I want it to play on. So I actually don't even need to, in that case, tell Alexa I want it to play. I can just walk in with my phone in my hand, take out my AirPods, push the button, and it starts playing on the speakers.
Yeah.
I think it's just another tool that's going to further integrate that whole audio home space. It's not a big thing. It exists in other products.
I think the problem is, in order for that to really be successful, what you need to be able to do is pull people off of iPhone music going directly and easily to your Alexa in your home, to your Echo in your home. That's the real problem, is in order for that to be useful for you, you've got to move that person over to Amazon Music, which so far has been okay, but not like a knock it out of the park star, right?
Yeah, here's the interesting thing about it. Most people don't know they have it. Like, Prime members don't realize they have Amazon Music.
People consume Prime Video all the time. Like, Prime, Amazon Music has not been nearly
successful. I actually think a lot of people don't even realize what Prime Video is. I bet if you went out and
but it's vastly more successful than music.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because of the shows.
Yeah.
One of the things that's interesting, and Amazon obviously makes this play, is Audible, which is owned by Amazon, produces original podcast content, has a driver of value for their Audible subscribers. If Amazon let some of that content leach out into Amazon Music, and then had not just music, but had full audio and was doing podcasts, you could do some really interesting things. Being able with Amazon being a host for podcasts and original audio content through Amazon Music, I think that would enhance awareness of Amazon Music. Now, obviously, you would degrade a little bit the value of Audible with their original content play there.
But they still have tons of original content that is not in that format, right? Because even for books that they didn't create the story on, they get the exclusive rights to produce the audiobook for. The newest Artemis, Andy Weir's book, they got an exclusive right to produce the audiobook and do a pretty sporty production with that came out at Audible. One of the most compelling podcasts / audiobooks that I've listened to in the past year, I'm a big fan of the true crime genre, was a series called West Cork that was basically a podcast but presented as an audiobook. It was released all at once. The episodes still felt like episodes. There was an intro and an outro, but they were just treated as chapters in an audiobook. That's something that would have felt much more natural in something like a music app or a podcast app, but because they did it through Audible Studios, it came out like an audiobook. So I think you could jettison that content into its proper medium and not degrade the overall value of Audible too much.
Yeah, and enhance awareness of Amazon
the
music.
Other products that they're putting money into.
Yeah, but like the fact is, with Amazon, of all the plays they're making, that might not even be the 50th most interesting thing that they could do in the space. I do think in the next year we'll see someone make a hard play. It's going to be Amazon or Facebook or Google make a hard play into the audio format. There's billions of dollars being spent on podcast advertising. None of it is. It's all direct buy. None of it is really programmatically.
Yeah.
You can do some smaller networks, like your Gimlets or your Panoply buys. But when that market opens up, it'll be.
Even then, it's still direct buy, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's just going to more shows than one show at a time.
Yeah,
but it's
but
still a direct buy.
But I can't target, women 35 to 47 who live in, North Florida or
No, I mean, right now
Atlanta.
it looks a lot more like television looked, early on, where your only real option to target people was by the show itself. So we know that these type of people demographically listen to this show, so that's where we're going to advertise.
When that space does open up, I think
it's going to be super interesting.
Well, it's not going to be interesting. It's going to be big.
Yeah.
It'll be. I think it starts out opening up. When you can do that at 20% the size of radio, and pretty quickly grows to be 50 or 60% the size of radio buys. Once, and I think we're 5 years out from getting to that rate, but once it opens up, it'll probably open it at 20%. And the interesting thing to me is, I think radio, in a world where audio is uber successful right now, like it's having a new golden age of audio thanks to podcasting. Radio I think still does well, but I don't think, you could cite iHeartRadio maybe as a counterexample to this, but I can't think of a breakout cultural phenomenon that's come from a traditional radio format station.
Yep.
Can anybody? No, I mean, it's all been driven straight to podcast stuff, and I do think there's room. Somebody's going to buy a cheap radio station in a big market.
So I mean, even radio stations or public radio, I mean, they're more likely.
Okay, so actually NPR is the one you could say, because they really pioneered the modern podcast.
But even some of the public radio options are choosing to put something first as a podcast, and maybe they broadcast it on the air at some point. I mean, This American Life being an exception. It's an extraordinarily successful show and an extraordinarily successful podcast. But, there are public radio networks or other radio networks choosing to create because they have the equipment, the host, the talent, the ability.
I'm going to save someone's radio company with the advice I'm about to give.
Give it.
You ready?
Do it.
Here's what you do. You buy a radio station. It can be a small one. Doesn't really matter.
Another one? I've already got several.
Yeah, well, buy more.
Okay.
And all you run on the radio station is you just run clips from podcast. And you could theme the radio station. It could be, maybe a sports talk station, and then all you do is run clips of sports talk podcast. And that's all you do, is you run those clips from podcast in order to push people into listening to, to certain podcasts. And the catch is there, I think, twofold. I think one is you can sell advertising based on that, because podcast discovery is very difficult. And so doing the podcast discovery, and that makes it easy for the consumer to do. I push the radio, it comes on.
Yep.
They'll listen to a few ads. You'll have greater opportunities to stitch in the ads, because you can stitch the ad in between stories. And then you get a feel for what people are responding to and your podcasts, that you're previewing. And then you go into podcast development in your own right, and you start to develop your own podcast network out of it. But you use terrestrial radio to drive some traditional but some non-traditional
satellite
podcasts.
radio. I think Sirius or XM could do the same thing.
Yeah.
Sirius XM together.
They actually have a lot of, interesting audio long-form content on that platform. But I do think having a radio station that broadcasts segments of podcasts, I don't know. I haven't really done any podcast rights buying, but I imagine you could go get that for relatively cheap for segments. But all it is all day long, and you can play, based on, like a normal radio station does. So in the morning, you might play, your business podcast. In the afternoon, you might have like some travel podcasts. In the evening, you might have some news podcast. And then you're repurposing this content that they want to find listeners. You have a station where it's easy to get people involved and like introduce them to the format and then refer them out.
Well, if you want to sell us your radio station for cheap, we're now interested in buying it.
So if I was the investor in that, here's what I'd point out. Like, ultimately, if you're successful, you're giving people reasons not to listen to your radio station.
Yeah, well, unless the second play is like your radio station is creating.
But I'd say they're going to come back
content.
where they got fed.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I mean, if you start to, I mean, like you said and laid out, like start to produce the content that you're slipping into that radio station feed, I mean, you can create the market for yourself.
Yeah. And I feel like it's a very millennial-friendly format, right? Like the buzzword millennial, it's very, very short bites. You don't have to hang on it
Everybody
a long
wants
time.
to get to millennials.
Yeah, everybody wants to get those millennials. They're not even reaching boomers anymore. They want to get millennials.
Producer Kyle, do we have any questions we need to tackle?
Someone commented earlier about SoundCloud. I think you guys saw it, but SoundCloud being the audio social network right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right.
I mean, it covers a lot of different spaces.
So I'll take that on. I don't think I count that as a social network necessarily because of the way it's used. Like for me to count it really needs to work on on Alexa, right? And it needs to work in a way where you can like run through it in bytes, and a lot of SoundCloud stuff tends to be long. Now you can share and you can compile, you curate on SoundCloud, but here's an idea that I think ultimately works for social media and audio. I think one day you have an app format that works like this. It's you pick your 10 or 5 or whatever it is, whatever you have the appetite for, closest friends or people you want to hear from every day or every couple days, and then the app prompts everybody in the group with a certain question. And it could be, what's your favorite food where you eat, or like what's a reason, like some personal question to get them thinking. Alexa prompts you to record your fixed 15-second, 20-second, whatever it is, advice. You record that, and then Alexa, when your friends say, Alexa, play my Talk to Me app, and then Talk to Me repeats, and it's your friends recounting different memories or experiences or whatever they had that day. That's what I'll count as a social media app. I just don't think it's been developed yet.
I think for audio, like SoundCloud would be considered that, because SoundCloud looks to me like the audio version of like what YouTube is. Like you can pick up your own content.
I think I agree with you because SoundCloud is bigger than just voice.
Yeah, it's audio. It's not like that's the voice app, but like a true audio social network would right now the closest thing is.
I agree that's the closest thing,
yeah.
But I don't think it's what really.
I think the problem is that it doesn't have broad appeal to everyone. I think for the music creators and the people that are hardcore into that, I mean, it is very much a social network for them because they are in there with people they've probably never met before, collaborating, commenting, engaging, making connections. Like there are some really social aspects of that going on that aren't necessarily like the casual user is introduced to something to hear.
Okay, so and look, it is technically a social network in the same way YouTube is technically a social network. I have a lot of trouble thinking about YouTube as being a social network because user behavior on that platform varies so greatly from what you see on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. And look, that might be they've anchored my opinion on what that is, but I think because of that, what makes all those things work is they have constrained form factors. Like if you want to post and produce, like there's something constraining it, and you could say audio is a constraint or video is a constraint, but the fact is there's so much variance inside of it. It's hard to share in I don't know, can you give me an example of like a viral SoundCloud element?
It happens for sure in, say, like the EDM community or the hip-hop community where you have amateurs that have distribution that they would otherwise never have. I think I think even SoundCloud, and I mean, Kyle, jump in here, but I think SoundCloud looks different even than YouTube to me because there's not a point for most users on YouTube where no matter what you do, you're going to connect with another user on YouTube. You might comment on someone's video, that is it. I think there are users connecting to each other on SoundCloud in ways that don't happen on YouTube because of what's being shared there and how personal it is to a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean,
the answer is it's probably in a gray area between the two, right?
Yeah.
It's not fully a social network.
Yeah, I think it's almost like a social network, like, and this might sound crazy, but like sometimes I consider like in like the middle zone, right? So like it's like the content creation where there is
Yeah.
a social platform on it, but like you connect through Instagram or Facebook. Like
Yeah.
you share your SoundCloud, you share your Spotify.
The connection is not
Yeah.
the featured
Here-
thing.
Yeah, so like
Yeah.
that's why I think Joe's correct. Like
Yeah.
it's not a true social network as much as it is. It's trying to be, but I don't think it's quite there.
Yeah, and I think it's because of the form factor. You can do it's good for creators because you can
Yeah.
do so much with it. But here's my litmus test. I couldn't get my mom on it. She knows Facebook, like she can figure out
Yeah.
Facebook. She's on Insta. She's got Insta figured out because of the constrained form factor on it. Like she gets how to use it, and then the density of connection.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to
you
get your
can
mom on
build.
Snapchat either, though, right? I mean, and Snapchat's definitely a social network.
But-
My mom just joined Snapchat recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean I got off it, but she's downloading and snapping every day. So.
Yeah, but look, I mean, there's a social media with that had some complexity to it that was a barrier to getting a mass audience into it.
Mhm.
But yeah, I can see what you mean, Kyle. I think for me, it's you got to be able to. It's got to be bite-sized, consumable, and enough people have to be on it where you can maintain the relationship using it. And I can't simulate, not even really maintain. You simulate maintaining a relationship. I can't simulate maintaining a relationship with friends in another state via SoundCloud right now. I can definitely simulate that on Instagram and Facebook. And back in the day, a little bit on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't simulate it on. That's just not how people are using it.
Yeah, I agree.
Like no one's posting. Maybe they are, but it's not a thing where like they're not posting like, oh, listen to Little Billy read his first book, and then that's what Grandma and Grandpa get on to listen to is the audio of Little Billy reading his first book.
Yeah, I think it's more of like an online network than it is a social network.
Yeah.
Like it's not people communicating really. It's more
Yeah.
like you network with people that are in the same thing, same
Yeah.
audio experience that
Yeah.
you are. Deep on that. That was cool.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's important because it's going to happen, right? Somebody's going to build the audio first social media app. I don't think it exists yet, and that's not that I think SoundCloud.
I mean, that's what Anchor's trying to do. I don't know that it's done it very successfully so far, but that's the goal of Anchor is to turn audio into a social network.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing is like you can be too early with something, and that's as bad as being too late. Probably worse than being too late. And I think right now for an audio social network, we're still too early in it. People
I think
are.
the interesting thing is though they can probably hang around for long enough to have been the first one and adapt to wherever the market goes with it to still be the early entrant when we get there.
Yeah.
As long as you don't have, a hyper-inflated set of engineering costs or, I mean, there's nothing really to sell right now, so you don't have a sales staff. If you can keep it small and wait out till the market's there, there's still value in having been there for a year or two when that bubble starts to come
So I've
up.
never used Anchor. How does it work?
I haven't used it extensively, but, I mean, it's made to essentially turn you into a podcaster without having to go to a lot of trouble.
Okay, interesting.
Short form, longer form, probably short form because you're going to talk into your phone.
Yeah.
It's not hook up microphones, get a mixer, record it, publish it. It's made to turn, voice essentially into the way you communicate as opposed to posting a picture or a video.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So I can see something like that. Again, what I go back to is I think for audio especially,
It's a weird
the form
space.
factor of it has to be constrained enough in such a way that how you use it is obvious to anybody who gets on.
Yeah.
Because here's the problem with SoundCloud, right? Even YouTube, but people like creators are really good at YouTube. Average people are not good at using YouTube.
Yeah.
You have an infinitely blank canvas you have to fill in. Right? One of the best things Facebook did for itself in terms of user engagement was prompting you, how was your day today? Question mark in the posting. And I think until you have an app with better constraints on what you could and should do with it, I think it's going to be hard to get anything breaking out.
Matt is watching
Yeah.
Batman Dark Knight.
It's so weird to me to think about what a audio social network even looks like, because when you think of audio,
It doesn't look, it sounds.
Yeah, I mean so that's an obvious thing, but I can't. like sending messages to people like in an audio form seems super creepy. Like,
But remember, you're not sending message. What I think, and this I agree with you, by the way.
Yeah.
If it was like, Alexa, tell Kyle that he's cool and he's great producer,
it's like-
great working with him! ! That's not going to work. What works is this: there is a prompt that Alexa or the app gives you.
It's a question of the day.
It's a question of the day or something like that, and it's probably gonna be cultural. It's like, have you seen the new Batman movie? Give your friends a 10-second review, and so it is prompting you, and it is providing the platform.
Or it figures out a consistent thing that you do well, right? So if you're into giving 2-minute movie reviews, not necessarily prompting you just every once in a while for different things, but consistently giving you the same thing over and over again, right?
Yeah.
So the food critic gets prompted about where they ate in town, or the Tallahassee local influencer talks about what they've been to, what's interesting in town. I think the reason it doesn't make sense yet as how it can work as a social network is because the market hasn't conditioned you to follow audio content quite the same way it's conditioned you to follow video or photos. It was weird when Facebook encouraged you to take a photo of you doing something and post it online for a set of people to see, that you weren't physically showing them yourself, right? You weren't showing them an album or sending it to them in the mail or emailing a single picture, right? That was weird. Poking people on Facebook was super weird.
Dude, I'm telling you, what it has to do is that constraint is because we know what works on audio because it worked in radio for years. So it's got to be a question, and I think you're right. I think people tend to they will dig down on what they end up liking and connect with the friends, but it'll be like tell Blabber why you think your favorite football team's going all the way this year.
Well, I mean, think about how the social networks you use right now are already conditioning you that way, even if you don't think about it, right? Like, how many people look at Ryan's, 2-sentence movie reviews on Facebook? So, hey, Ryan, if you could see this.
At Smithapalooza, if you're looking to follow him.
I mean, how many people will look at, people they know are foodies post for, interesting recommendations? Like, anytime I get a new piece of technology that I post, everybody's like, oh, how do you like it? Because they know I'm obsessed with, gear. So I think audio will follow that same pace. It's just much more of an immature medium now. And once you're not consuming, nearly as much terrestrial or satellite radio, and you're consuming much more podcast content, and you're doing it constantly because they're in your ears, then it's going to be a much more natural adjustment of I didn't look at as many pictures today. I listened to more people's summaries or 2-minute stories.
And that app has to put the people in position where they're providing decent content on those things, and I don't think that's out there right now.
I was just saying, it seems like another great way to enforce those echo chambers, because if you have it seems like it starts off by less surfing a social network and connecting with people, more like your contacts list.
Oh, so I actually think the future of social networks yet to be born is going to be more closely held social networks. Honestly, I think especially what you see what's going on there, they're just hesitant to connect with the broader world. I think over time those networks will grow, but it'll be a lot less. The audio social network of the future will be a lot less. It's like, hey, you knew, Jesse James back in high school, want to connect? No, that would be super weird. I don't want to hear this.
If I knew Jesse James in high school, I probably would want to connect with him. That's a cool dude.
Yeah, I was just making up a name, right? But it'll be too weird because hearing someone's voice is 10,000% more intimate than reading something they wrote or looking at a picture.
A huge number of Facebook friends that you have right now, or even Instagram people that you chose to follow, you made the decision to do that based on whether or not you knew them, and that was it. What is going to change is you are going to start making that follow or like decision based on whether or not they actually create content that you're interested in seeing on a regular basis, right? You have 3,000 Facebook friends that you accepted their request or gave their request. just because you knew them, right? Like you sat in class with them in high school, you had a class with them in college, you met them at a party. Like you didn't necessarily think of that decision as opting in to see their content. You're going to get much more conscientious about opting in to see people's content going forward, the way a lot of people are doing with brands right now.
Yeah, and hearing their content is going to be a whole other thing.
Yeah, seeing, hearing, consuming the content that they put out.
Because
in whatever
as humans, we have much stronger responses to people's voices in a lot of cases than we do to their faces. Because, like, if someone annoys you, like, they probably annoy you, like, by stuff they're saying to you.
Or just the sound of their voice.
Yeah, or vice versa. If you get happy when you're around them, it's probably because like when they're talking, the sound of their voice is exciting. I just think the intimacy of audio is so much greater.
Even when you have an interesting video with compelling visual content, if you have really crappy audio, that is the quickest thing that will turn someone off for that video. Mm-hmm. So I mean, the voice, the noise that's being created for you to consume is insanely important. All right, we're at over an hour at this point. If we have any other questions, producer Kyle will take them. I don't think we do.
Nope.
No. Okay. So just as a reminder, even if you didn't catch this as it aired live, if you've got a question for us about any things we talked about or something else that we missed in digital media or marketing this week, drop it in the comments below. We'll stay on top of it. We'll continue to go to answer your question in the comments if we can. Other than that, we will be back next week. Thank you for joining us. Have an awesome day.